Now that the cake is stacked and filled, we want to get a crumb coat on it. And what the crumb coat does is locks in the crumbs so that they don't end up working their way out onto the outer layer of buttercream. This is especially important with a chocolate cake as those crumbs are much darker. So you're going to start with a dollop of frosting on the top, not quite as much as what we would do for the final coat. You're going to press the frosting with a back and forth motion so that it evenly is distributed around the upper edges of the cake. Notice my cake has some movement to it because I've got jam in between each layer, so it's not a secure fit. So after I get the crumb coat on, and if you notice I'm holding the cake a little bit and I'm being gentle with the back and forth motion, making sure that the shape of it isn't compromised. And I'll put it right into the refrigerator after the crumb coat. That's always the next step, and that's to firm up the buttercream and to also firm up the layers of the cake so they don't shift on you. The point of the crumb coat is to put enough buttercream on so that the entire cake is covered, but you can see clearly through it the cake underneath. So it needs to be a very thin layer and just enough to secure the crumbs. If you remember, as you're working down the cake, you're holding onto the back side of the offset spatula and you're working on the tip of the spatula with frosting, and you're moving back and forth as you angle it one way, then the other, and that pushes the buttercream into the empty spots. Once you get about halfway around, usually there's enough frosting that you don't have to continually add some. And you want to make sure that there are no holes. So even if you've made it all the way around the cake, but you're finding that some of the cake hasn't had any frosting cover it, you need to go back around and add a little bit more frosting there. And now I'm pressing very firmly, and it's helping to straighten the cake a little bit. And it's also removing any excess buttercream. I'm just going to quickly level the top. And the camera angle makes this look very uneven. I'm not sure why, because it is fairly level on the surface. So, if you notice, I did have a cardboard cake round underneath this. I had cut it to size so that when I smooth out the sides of the cake, the cardboard isn't interfering with my motion, and I'm able to still use the cake turner itself as the bottom surface. And what this allows is to have a nice clean cake from top to bottom. You may have noticed that cardboard cake rounds absorb the fat in the buttercream. So by cutting the cardboard cake circle to size, or buying the right size for the pan that you have, you might only have 1/4 of an inch around the outer edge, and that gives you just enough to build the buttercream up to the edge of the cake round, and then transfer it to a serving platter or a plate. So from here, this is going into the refrigerator for about 20 to 30 minutes. I'll know when it's ready, one, when the cake doesn't shift if I move it slightly, and also when you touch the surface of the cake, if the buttercream doesn't stick to your finger, then you know that the buttercream is firm enough.